Well, again, we got two people here. I'm gonna let them know that we're here. I got that in my email. Tammy, do you have the credit card?
I do.
Do you want
Yeah.
a copy?
Sorry, I had a little snafu already, so.
Okay. Do you want anything, Tim?
No, I guess I'm good.
Okay.
Thank you. Let me grab I have the card right here.
Is there a talk today?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Because they didn't have it on their schedule. And I thought I was mistaken. Again.
Which schedule?
The uncommon.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
On the
okay.
what?
Uncommon schedule.
Oh.
Hello, Andy.
Hi, Betsy.
How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm well, thanks.
I didn't know Uncommon has a schedule. We can put it on. That is yours.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. All right. I am probably going to. I got in. Yeah.
Let me know when we're live, Tammy.
Good.
We're live. Okay. Hi, everybody. Thanks for coming to the coffee chat, Town of Essex coffee chat about the budget. Maybe we do some quick introductions. I'm Greg Duggan. I'm the town manager.
Andy Watts, Chair of the Select Board.
I'm Trevor Williams. I'm on the planning committee.
I'm Betsy White, and I'm just here to listen.
And I'm Nancy Williams, and I'm just
Nice. I'm Tammy Getchell. I'm an assistant. So
Well, thanks for joining us. Kind of just give a quick overview of the budget and where we're looking and going, where the select board stands right now, and what's next, and then we can have a little conversation and chance to ask questions or whatever, get some feedback, whatever it may be. So, the budget this year, we've been working on it. The select board's been working on it. Can you hear me? Okay.
Yeah, but you're gonna have to keep that level.
I'll try. If I go down, just give me a. So the select board's been working on the budget since mid-November. They had the first budget workshop. Staff has been working on it since really September. We started putting together budgets. Got the manager's budget proposal to the select board. They've been working on it now. The select board gave us a few goals. They wanted to have the budget increase be 5% or less. We're at that point right now. Or tax rate increase, excuse me. They had some goals around outreach and engagement, expanding and improving the pedestrian and trail network, increasing revenue, and focusing on our capital needs. So I think the budget tackles all those goals at this point. We're talking about a $16.2 million budget. Sorry, Betsy.
No, that's
come a little
okay.
bit closer too.
That's okay.
So as far as the goals, trying to accomplish some of the stuff that select board set out to achieve, we've added a couple of positions to the budget, both part-time. One would be an administrative assistant to work in the manager's office. That would actually free up a lot of time for Tammy, who does our communications and outreach. Right now, she also does a lot of the admin work, putting together packets, agendas, sending out letters, scheduling people. We can shift a lot of that stuff towards the admin person. That would free up Tammy to do a lot of this for coffee chat. Tammy does some great newsletters that can go out to the community. And just focus more on how do we engage, how do we reach our residents, how do we communicate. So that's a big part of that. As far as the pedestrian trail network and connectivity, there's another part-time position that's proposed in the budget, trails coordinator, which will be able to do a lot of that work. Hopefully work on mapping our trail network, working with the community development department, public works as far as sidewalks and trails. So that's an effort there. The biggest change in revenue this year is we put a lot of our money into higher bearing interest accounts. So that's expected to generate quite a bit more money than we have in the past. $320,000 of interest revenue is projection. The past year it was $17,000, so big change. Thank you. That additional money is also going to be coming into this current fiscal year as well, somewhere around that amount. So it's more than we had budgeted, more than we had projected. So having some additional revenue there. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, that's perfect. And as far as capital, we're working on the capital plan concurrently. We expect to have some fund balance this year, which we're recommending a good chunk of that goes towards capital in our projects. We're also just spending a lot of time getting a better sense of what our capital needs are, how to fund them in the future. So a lot of that is going on as well. With all that in mind, that's kind of where we're going. As I mentioned, we're looking at less than a 5% tax rate increase. Select board is still working on their budget. They've been going through some workshops, so getting to that final number potentially as soon as Monday, but definitely by January, so that we can present to voters, have a public hearing before we go to town meeting, and voters will be voting on the budget at town meeting. I think that's pretty much it for the overview. If you want to add anything else, Andy, and then we can open it up.
No, nothing else to add. Any questions or comments?
Great chat. How we doing?
The property, we're going to have new property assessments, right?
Yes, reappraisal.
When
Yes.
does that kick into the budget? When will the budget reflect that?
Sure. So that'll be the reappraisal's happening now. It's supposed to wrap up by June of 2025. So it'll be reflected in the fiscal 26 tax year.
So your September bill, your bill that you would pay in September of next year would reflect your new assessment. That's the outlook, right?
No, it's going to be 25. September of 25. It'll show that.
September of 25. Let's say that FY. Oh, right.
Right. So the calendar year, it'll wrap up in calendar year calendar year 2025 June. Fiscal year 26 starts that July 1st.
Yeah.
It'll reflect in that September of 2025 tax bill.
Okay. Right. There's another. Right. It's not going to finish in 6 months. It finishes in 18 months.
Correct.
From now.
Correct.
Okay. So it'll be 18 months from now. Right?
Yeah.
Right.
And so how that works, how that affects the budget. A year from now, the select board will be going through the same process. They'll be presenting their budget. Typically we've seen about a 3, 4, 5% increase in the budget. Last year was the exception when we lost the Essex Junction tax base, so the budget actually went down, but the tax rate went up quite a bit. But historically, the budget itself has gone up 4%, give or take a little bit. Assuming all else equal, projecting a year ahead from now, we can probably look at a 3, 4, 5% budget increase. The reappraisal, the values of your home will probably be going up based on the market, but the budget will be the same. So what that means is that we'll have to raise the same amount of money, so the tax rate will be lower. You'll pay a similar amount in taxes to raise that amount of money. So the value of your home will change, but the tax rate will not. The exception to that is the capital tax. So we have a 3-cent capital tax. That raises about $480,000 right now. Because that's a set amount, it's 3 cents. If the value of your home goes up, that 3 cents is going to cost more money. So that's where the reappraisal is likely to affect your tax rate.
I'm sorry. No. I totally don't understand what you just told me. You are telling me that my home is going to be reappraised.
Yes.
But that the amount of money that we have to raise is going to be the same. The budget is never the same. How can that possibly be?
The budget goes up about, historically, this is an average, but it goes up about 4% every year.
Right.
So if the budget is 16, if the budget is roughly $16 million this year,
Right.
it'll go up 4%, roughly 4% next year. And these are all projections. We haven't done it yet. So let's call it, for the sake of round numbers, let's call it $16.5 million.
So that's not the same amount of money. You said the amount is going to be the same. You were referencing the percent increase.
Mm-hmm.
I thought you said we have to raise the same amount of money, which makes no sense.
We'll have to raise a little bit more money.
Right.
Yes. So I misspoke.
Okay.
Yeah, the budget will likely go up, yes. But the intent of a reappraisal is that it's tax neutral. That some house, some relative to everybody else's house, yours may go up or down, or it may stay the same. So it may.
Do people really go down?
In 2007, when the last reassessment, my house did go down.
Get out of
No,
this town.
the relative to everybody else's, my taxes went down in 2007 when homes were reassessed.
Well, I know where I'm coming from.
So it depends. To some degree, it depends on when your house was built, whether it was assessed relative to everything else, and so it could go up or down. Depending on where it's all a relative thing.
Another way to look at it is, that budget, it's going to go up 4%. So it'll go up, again, don't hold me to that 4%,
Well,
but
no, of course.
it'll go up a little bit. But let's say, just for the sake of discussion, I'm going to make up numbers. Let's say your home value goes up 25%. That does not mean your taxes are going to go up 25%. Does that make sense?
Oh, no. So explain that to me.
So
relatively,
this is Dan Roy, he's our finance director.
sorry for showing up late. So relatively speaking, say your house goes up 25%, her house goes up 30%, this house 20%. Those are all kind of relative shares that you're all going to carry out. Like she'll pay a little bit more, but it won't be a 25% increase. What's going to happen is there's going to be a bigger piece of pie that everyone shares in. So the pie kind of expands, but the tax base number remains the same. The amount of taxes that we're looking for remains the same. So in that regard, on an individual basis, if you're comparing from home to home, there's going to be slight differences. But in the overall scheme of things, we're going to have a larger group, a larger number to draw on. Kind of take the juxtaposition with the loss of the city last year. We had a lot less people paying taxes, so everyone had to pay more. And everyone's going to have, some possible increase in their assessed value. We're all going to potentially share in that, and then the rate will be determined based on everyone's new rate, not just your individual increase, everyone's shared increase.
And the rate will be lower, even though the assessment is high.
Well, the rate may not be.
Presumably.
The tax rate will,
The
the tax
tax
rate
rate
will
as you
be
look
lower,
at it.
but with your higher assessment, you may be paying more or less or the same.
I see.
Yeah, if you need to raise $16 million on a $10 million grand list, and that grand list is now 12 million, the denominator is different, so their tax rate changes
Makes
accordingly.
sense.
Does that answer your question, Betsy?
Yeah.
Okay.
What are some of the future capital expenditures that you're anticipating?
You want to talk capital there?
So for capital expenditures, we have 4 kind of larger areas that are upcoming. We have a stormwater group that's determined really by state projects for phosphorus reduction and mitigation. That there's an estimate of that being a $5 million project over 17 years. So that's roughly $300,000 a year. Our fire vehicles, we currently have, about 8 to 10 fire vehicles that we need to replace on different time cycles. On a basis, we should be saving almost $300,000 to replenish those trucks as well. We have a similar group for public works and our major equipment there. That runs about $300,000 to $325,000 annually is what we should be saving for those groups. And then our next biggest group is our road reconstruction, which is, obviously our major paving projects. If we have a major rebuild, something like that. We do have an operating segment within the budget for paving as well, but these two pieces kind of work together, and that's about right now $200,000 annually. So taking all 4 of those pieces and not talking about paths and trails and recreation, playground replacement, buildings. So we're already talking over $1 million with those 4 segments, and there's obviously other needs beyond that as well.
Now, when will that start? When will that be reflected in the next fiscal year?
So we are trying to introduce those items into our current capital plan. The phosphorus item is a little bit later on into the future, but it's upcoming. The fire equipment and the PW equipment, those are ongoing needs, as is the road reconstruction. So those we try and reflect within our capital budget. And, obviously the capital tax rate and our different funding sources for those type of endeavors are reflected within that kind of capital project budget.
And we've already been contributing to those funds every year. We're looking, and I think our past efforts in this have been a little more short term. We're trying to say, okay, well, we want to look at a 5-year window to say, okay, are we keeping up with our needs, or are we falling behind? And so that's why I think a lot of these numbers are coming. We're trying to highlight that, last year we asked for a 1 cent increase in the capital tax, and staff actually asked the select board for more, and we said, well, we got a reassessment coming up too. We don't know the impact of that, so we're kind of waiting to see how that plays out. And then if we're still short, then we need to look at others. Do we need to increase the capital tax more? Do we need to do more operational budget transfers? Do we need to look at local option tax? So there are a number of things we're going to have to consider. The other thing that Dan didn't mention is we bought a piece of property over here.
Yes. Oh, so that did
and
close.
we're gonna have a desire to put some buildings on that, and so those will be those buildings will be another large capital expenditure coming forward, which may involve a bond vote, may involve. So those are things that we need to be considering as we're going forward.
At the select board meeting, the last one, didn't you say none of those buildings were figured in a budget at all, or any planning done for that? So I know you guys bought the land, but
So the
timeline of the plan of all the new facilities going in.
So if you look at the capital budget that we also talked about at the last select board meeting, there is $40 million in there in a couple years out to address putting buildings there. We don't yet have a plan for how to fund that. We don't have a plan yet for exactly what those buildings are going to look like. They may not all happen at the same time. They may be phased.
But just as someone who's in their late 20s, going to be here for the rest of their life, like the next generation that's going to be bringing young families, raising families in the town, just thinking ahead, that's something that's going to affect more so all the younger families coming into this town that we're trying to bring in, people with families, small single families. And I just wonder how that's going to adjust all of that, creating like a new fire station. You're saying we already have two good facilities. I just wonder if that's going to deteriorate by raising taxes and everything from families to other surrounding towns in Essex.
Yep, that's a consideration. We fully understand that it's expensive to live in Vermont for a lot of
Not even
reasons.
Vermont, more so Essex. Vermont's been seeing this drastic increase of people from other states wanting to move up here and live in Vermont. But it's more so what I'm referring to as the town of Essex, not Vermont in general. So our town with this meeting is about.
Yeah. So if I may, you're right. We're going to have to look and Andy said we're very rough estimates for new facilities over there. We're talking about town offices, which right now are no longer in the town of Essex, or in the city of Essex Junction. We're talking about a fire station, which is getting to be outdated for what it is. We could use that if they move out of there. That facility can be filled by Public Works, used by Public Works.
So like you're saying, you just bought these two properties over here. We're going to move our town out offices. Has there been a plan to potentially sell the land or lease the land in the building out to try to subsidize some of these costs for that new area?
So that's what we're going to be. Yeah, that's what we're going to be looking at. So now that we have the land, we can spend more time focusing on what's the time frame, how do we pay for it, what are the needs, what's the community willing to support.
Yeah.
As Andy mentioned, we're very likely to have to go to a bond vote for any of these facilities, which is going to be the whole community votes on it. Andy mentioned the local options tax, capital tax. We have assets with the current town offices, 81 Main Street. Do we sell that? Do we lease that? With the land we bought, there's about 18, 19 acres that are developable. We probably need 8 to 12 of those acres. So what happens with the rest of it? Do we subdivide? Do we lease? Do we
I was
sell?
going to say, because that's the thing, it should have been a red flag in my opinion, just like, I know might not be as savvy on purchasing as you guys, but shouldn't that have been a red flag when they wouldn't just sell one of the properties, just the specific amount we needed, and they kind of forced us into buying both lots?
We don't think so. It was an option. It was discussed. My understanding is that they've been looking to sell those two properties together all along. From our standpoint, it gives us more control. We can look at our town plan. We can look at our planning documents. It helps our town center. What do we want to see there? So we have a bit more control of what does the community want? We're going to go through planning exercises, get community input. Do we want homes? Do we want restaurants? Do we want commercial space? Do we want resident? What's it going to look like? So we can have more control over how does that land get developed. That also helps the tax base, theoretically. So that helps offset back to the grand list, the reappraisal. If we have a bigger grand list, a bigger tax base, assuming we don't need to increase services. Usually when you have a dense area like that, your services are clustered. So it's not like you're creating new roads, new sidewalks. So if that builds up there, that helps the tax rate, helps the tax base. Hopefully we get a lot of community input as to what we want to see in our town center, around our town offices, around our municipal complex, those types of things.
That was another question, is the public going to have voting input on some of the size of these structures? Because growing up in this town, I know where the police station used to be in the town offices. Totally agree that was a little outdated and everything. Are we going to build a third fire station that is as absurdly big as the police station, kind of. That just was just looking at it compared to where we went. That was just like another 2 steps above what taxpayers are going to be paying for.
I would say, I'm going to try to answer your question. I would say that we're going to be having public discussions with community development, with the select board about what do we need and what kind of buildings are we going to be proposing to voters. And so hopefully we'll get a lot of input as to what we're asking for, why we're asking for it, how we're presenting it. We'll be looking, we want buildings that last for 50, 75, 100 years, and that we'll be able to grow into as well.
But yeah, to answer that question fully, is the select board going to be deciding that, or is it going to be put up to a public vote?
Both. So the select board will be having those conversations, assuming we go to a bond vote, which I think is a pretty safe assumption. The select board will be deciding what to present to the voters for a bond vote.
Okay.
The voters will then weigh in on yes or no on the bond vote.
But when you're talking about the bond vote, you're not talking about individual buildings. You're talking about dollar. What I hear you saying is you want voter input on all the buildings and everything that's going to go in there. And that's what these kinds of things are for. You cannot possibly vote on all of that stuff.
To me, they're intertwined, and you have to have. I want a vote to be successful. I want it to be something the community needs, the community wants, and something that the community is going to support. So in my mind, to do that, you have these conversations. You talk about what you're putting into the votes. You talk about what you're putting into the buildings. You're getting community input that hopefully they're going to support that. And then when it goes to vote, they're voting on what those buildings are. Yes, it's a dollar amount to pay for those buildings, but it's a dollar amount to hopefully support the buildings that the community has hopefully said that they want. So
But won't be voting.
they'll be voted on through the bond vote.
Yes.
You won't be voting on questions like should there be a room attached to the back for senior services?
Correct.
Those
What
things
I
will not be voted on.
am really getting at, trying to direct this to you is, we are all responsible for coming to these things and being informed. And that's how those discussions move forward that ultimately come to the bond.
That and the surveys that you fill out and
Yep.
the emails that you send and all of that plays into the decisions that people make on what do the buildings look like. And the same thing happened with the police station.
Sorry.
The same thing happened with the police station.
I can't help but feel all the people who are, head of the police, head of the fire, head of this, head of that. Okay, those people in our community, they look what's happened at Williston, and it's like a kid on Christmas morning. I would like one of those. So they put that forth in a public dialogue that is presentable and so forth, but it's like a kid in a candy store. When is enough enough? We have a very functioning everything right now, and I do not see any drastic development proposals on the table at this time. Very little ones. The area you purchased was for years and years and years at developmental meetings. It's outside the sewer core. Nothing can happen outside the sewer core. Oh my God. Well, now all of a sudden the town's involved. It's in the sewer core.
No, it's been in the sewer court all along.
Where does that sewer go? Nobody's ever talked about that. I understand all where the main lines are, the force mains are. Nobody has put forth where's it going to go. You can't make any more room to cross 15 and come down to this pump station that serves this whole complex, the inn, all the houses. That thing is maxed out. So nobody's talked about that. What is that going to cost?
Our Public Works Department is looking into sewer, doing sewer studies, capacity, where to direct it, how to direct it.
Studies are different than dollars.
You start with the study, and then you
That
can
I
have a
don't
sense of
agree.
what does it cost and where does it go. And they're in the study stage right now.
But why not do that before purchasing?
Took the words out of my mouth.
A couple of reasons. We need to do it anyways, and it's in the works. The land, we had an option. We had 7 months to investigate it. And so we had to make a decision with what we had and what we had to work with. And that's
So the decision in the end was to purchase before doing that research.
the research has been ongoing. We have the capacity. There is definitely capacity at the wastewater treatment plant.
the scenario you just outlined is totally counterintuitive to what a developer would do. A developer would never purchase and say, boy, I hope we can make that work. That's the approach you've taken. We're going to buy a blank slate and we're going to force it in there somehow. A developer, knowing they only have so much money to earn a profit, would never look at a project in the way you looked at it in the select board. You had all the months you said you were talking about in the select board. But I'm not a regular at select board meetings, but I catch a couple a year. And it was very hush-hush. It wasn't put out there. And if it was put out there, there would have been more public dialogue to attend meetings. All of a sudden it's announced, we bought this. And I've heard you say that's well within their right. It's well within the bylaws. I'm not arguing. What I'm arguing is we had a volunteer, not volunteer, they get paid. But, it's an ad hoc committee. These are to make that decision without getting any community input.
Which ad hoc group do you mean?
The select board, it's not ad hoc, they're appointed, I know, and they get paid and so forth and so on. But it's a group of citizens with no skill, and I shouldn't say they have their skills in all their own fields, but this is the field of real estate development. This takes special skill set, mindset to do it and do it correctly. All I'm saying is I don't see that present. I think this has just been rushed and hurried because we had money. Oh my God. And what we've started or is starting is I want that for my department. I want that for my department. Okay, it's like a child at Christmas. Who doesn't want the bigger and better toy? It's the same thing. I don't see any dramatic building that's going to occur within this community unless we ruin it and put all these apartments in, like the village. Why do we need so much right now? There are no major areas that are set to be developed within the town. And if they are, I'm not aware of it. So why do we all of a sudden need to be so much bigger and better and spend all this money? Because the government gave us an ARPA grant. Whoopee. I know it's done. I can't ask anybody to step backwards. But I'm asking everybody to look at this with a conscience of spending. You know what I own down here. You know why. It's been in my family. I'm the fourth generation. He's the fifth. We want to keep that affordable. Right now, our circle of businesses, we pay $2,000 a week, a little bit more than a week in property taxes, over $100,000 a year. It's getting to the point. How is this affordable for us? I'm not a developer. I'm a guy who is going to inherit a lot of land, and I'm fortunate because of that, and I know that. But it's grown out of control and everything around. Everybody wants. I've run businesses my whole life, and you never invest in something unless it's going to give you a return.
Wouldn't it be that the thing is that you can always, if you have the money to do it, you can always fix sewer problems. But that the town is growing, and it's kind of time is of the essence to find these parcels. So if you wait till everything is 100% settled, you're going to miss out on these opportunities. So you can always improve the sewer system. So I don't know.
I fail to see the areas of growth right now. Usually growth was, in the old days, we had single family going here, single family going here. By approving this and all, what we're doing is we're setting up the scene that you're going to see certain developers develop the you-know-what out of that side of Route 15. Our character is going to change. Maybe we'll get some single family out of it. That would be good. I like single family. I don't like apartments. Never have.
Well, nobody can afford single family.
Because there's a reason of that.
That I won't argue. And I don't know how to bridge that gap. Because apartment dwellers are not the people that attend these meetings.
John, I've been at a conference recently. I've heard other people ask this question too. How many people here have lived in an apartment? In the conference I was at, 95% of the people
at some point in their lives,
yeah.
And
There's a market for that, and there's a need for that. And not at different points in people's lives, they live there.
I won't argue that. I'm not arguing. I'm just very cautious of what I've seen happen down in the village. I refuse to call it a city. I'm sorry. I'm old school, still the village to me. The character of that community has changed, and it's changed drastically. Drastically. And if you haven't noticed that, you haven't been down there and spent any time looking at what's going on the sidewalk. It's an inevitable truth that it's going to happen. It seems to be happening anywhere where development's happening. You know, the porch pirates, the car thieves, on and on and on. And I guess I'm really heartbroken to see that happen in our community here now. But it's happening.
So one of the things that I've heard is that they're not going to do anything for at least 5 years. The select board, the town, it's 5 years out before they would ask for money.
Yeah,
I
so,
agree.
well, I would say fastest case scenario,
Uh-huh.
it's going to be at least 3 years before we're into any sort of new building.
Right.
Fastest case scenario, maybe there's a bond vote in March of 2025, so a year and a half. And this is all speculative because we have the land. John answered to respond to some of what you said. We wouldn't have bought it if we didn't think it was developable. That's what we spend a lot of our time doing. We work with an engineering firm to work on traffic access, to work on soil studies, to work on wetland studies, to work on natural habitat. We have a development consultant who's been with us every step of the way. They're going to continue to work with us. It's from White and Burke. They do a lot of development consulting in the area, commercial and municipal as well.
Yeah, they're a bigger firm.
Yeah, and so we have a consultant from there. They are fully supportive of it. They think this is the right move for the town. And to what Trevor said, there's not more land, and so we had an opportunity here.
I realize that.
I've been in this position for a little less than 2 years now as the town manager. When I first started, people were talking about new town offices. I was skeptical. We have some perfectly fine town offices.
I feel that way now.
I have come around. Land's not going to. The land's available. There's not going to be more of it. I don't know when those town offices, at a certain point, whether it's 3 years from now or 20 years from now, I expect that people are going to say, why do we go to a different city? Why do we go to a different municipality to do a town business? Now, when the community is going to say we're ready to move those town offices or build new town offices in the town, I don't know if that's going to be in 3 years or 20 years. We have the option now. I think a lot of that is going to land on the community. We're going to be able to present options of what do we need, when do we need it, how do we need it, how do we pay for some of it. I think that's where the community's going to have a lot of input in. Yes, we're ready for it. No, we're not. No, we don't want that fire station. Yes, we do want the community center. I don't know. That's going to be a lot of the community input in the votes that happen.
The part I fear now that you have this land is you're going to have to. Well, we need a community recreation center. We've
heard that. For many years.
It'll spiral and it'll go to all these what I think are crazy ideas that should be left to Rackett's Edge. You know, those businesses should not be in municipal. Ball fields are one thing. Buildings are another. I mean, I'm all for ball fields and public, that kind of stuff. Buildings is a whole new ball game because then it's an untapped or an unfulfilled thing that everybody's going to suggest for their personal idea of what they'd like to see.
So like that with recreational buildings and facilities, those take unlike parks, people to run them, be there, somewhat like employees. That if that's a town municipal building with those employees that are getting paid by the town.
So we already have a strong recreation department. They do a lot with the people that are in
I
there.
grew up at Maple Street Park.
Yeah, and they work. So we're running 2 or 3 times a week right now. We're running yoga classes, bone builder classes out in the town
So
offices.
wouldn't that be an expansion? I'm just wondering of more say classes or things to do.
Perhaps, but so what the recreation department has, it's called the program fund. It's an enterprise fund.
Yeah.
So basically the program fees, the fees for those programs, they fund themselves. Essex Junction, to look at a nearby neighborhood, they have a very strong program fund that pays for a lot of their staff, a lot of their programs. We're shifting in that direction where we still have a good chunk of the Parks and Rec department is paid for by town taxes. We're shifting more of that over been happening over the past few years. We're taking steps in that direction next year, the year after that, to cover a lot of those costs through those programs, through the swim lessons, through those entities
So
that
those
people are
things
paying.
are now starting to pay for that instead of town taxes.
Yes, and it may never be 100%, but it's shifting and it's finding that balance of
Shifting that direction.
what's is a park a public right that everybody should have public access to through taxes versus you want to do swim lessons, you want to do yoga programs, what's the right amount of subsidizing those, supporting those versus it's paid for by the user.
I just can't help but be very fearful of any increase. I mean, we own a huge chunk of land. We still own 200 acres of land, not play. He and I don't want to sell it. It's my decision. It's going to be his decision. How do we afford it? How do we keep open land? Not by playing golf on it. That was my idea because I did not want to do housing. I did not want to develop the land. When I was a child here, it was 510 acres was our farm.
So I hear you saying in one breath that you want single-family houses.
I do.
And in the other breath saying,
Not on our
but
land.
not on your land.
Well,
So not in
I'm
my
not.
backyard.
I'll be a little bit of an NIMBY. Okay. I would be open to the possibility of building some small number of single family, but they would not be affordable. That would never be my goal. Affordability. Yeah, you laugh, but
You can't
come on.
have it both ways, John.
I do now. I can walk out with my dog and we can go wherever. And
But you do. However, what I'm saying is
I just got paid dearly for that.
you cannot have single-family homes because you don't like apartments, but not have single-family homes.
Yes, my view on apartments is I've watched community after community. And the only one that I don't see that happening to is Winooski. And it's weird because I don't like what Winooski did, but you don't see people in the middle of the day hanging out. You do down here. And I'm not going to go any farther with that, but there's just what appear to be able-bodied people. Everybody's looking for help, and these people are hanging out. They're all over down in the village, all over. And maybe some, it is.
Well, a lot of those
But you
people too
know
are
this
young
now. You
working.
know that they are able-bodied now. You know that they don't have mental issues now. This is your opinion.
That
at
is
face
my opinion.
value.
I agree. Yes, very true.
So,
Very true. I think that barrier has been lowered way too low now for some people. Just like the service dogs. The bar is way too low. And as a result, it's created a lot of issues in society that weren't there in previous generations. And I don't know what to do about it. I'm not offering solutions. I'm just offering observations. I mean, I've lived here 64 years in the same property. And I would like to do something on that flat area. We call it the fill area, behind the golf course clubhouse. And I'm all about single family, but non-apartments. And there was another party interested in that land, and they have backed out. Rescue's going to go there. Seems like a good spot for them. They turn their sirens on and be anywhere in town in less than 5 minutes to that highway. Boom. They're on the highway and they're moving. So it serves everybody better than where it is currently. But I'm just trying to get my input on what I'm seeing. I've been here an awful long time. It's 104 years this month. My family is 1919, been here. My father spent his whole life there. I did. We own a landmark. I know that I'm a very lucky guy, but I'm just trying to afford it. It's getting crazy.
Tying to what you're saying, there's a way of properly developing and improperly developing. Because like you said, we did used to own this property. My grandparents developed into what it is. We sold it to the Edelmans, who have turned it into, I think, this whole shopping center what we've all grown to know and love more than it was, say, a decade ago. There's just a big difference in sky-rise buildings with apartments versus building things that are going to be beneficial for the community, but drawing more people into our community instead of skyscraper apartments. Because perfect example, look behind on Capino God's Hill that I think the Handy's built. He snuck in that 5th floor up there that now no one is able to use because the town didn't approve for it. He snuck it in, so it's.
I think that's a different building, Justin.
Yeah, that's down on Pearl Street.
Okay, yeah. Situations like
For the
that.
sake of-
197
This is
Pearl.
for the sake of devil's advocate. Just devil's advocate. You said talk about bringing in more people. What's going to bring in more people? Single families or the 4-story buildings?
But we're talking different type of bringing people in. I'm talking about bringing people in that are going to stay here for a while and build up our community. 8 times out of 10, people who are buying and getting an apartment here, they ain't going to be there their whole lives. It's a temporary in the time.
Because what they can afford. It's what they can afford.
That's great. I'm talking about something different. Now.
No, you're not.
I saying, have you heard of a mortgage?
So,
You can pay mortgages.
so everybody, I'm gonna interrupt. I'm gonna interject. This is a good conversation. I really do appreciate it. We did the coffee chat is focused on the budget.
Sorry.
No, it's all tied together. It's a good conversation, but I just want to bring it back. And other questions about the budget? Do we have budget things we want to focus
I have a
on?
question on the budget.
With the more extreme weather patterns, what do we have? Do we have anything built in for emergency, like roads washing out, floods?
Yes and no. Every year we approve a emergency management plan. Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission helps us with that quite a bit. We have an all hazards mitigation plan that gets updated every 2-3 years, I think. So we keep it in mind in that sense. We do a lot of stormwater work. Dan mentioned the stormwater stuff. We talked about some phosphorus standards, but a lot of it is just flow. And so we get these heavier storms, higher rain. We have had washouts in the past. Our public works department does a lot of work of trying to upgrade our culverts and our swales and our stormwater infrastructure so that we avoid some of those washouts. Back to our capital plan, we try to put money aside towards capital so we can maintain our infrastructure, so that we can build it, prep for it, be ready for those types of events versus having to rebuild unexpectedly. It does happen.
Yes, well, I know that the infrastructure, I don't know what improvements are going to be needed in the infrastructure to meet some of these, like, huge rain events, for instance.
A lot of it is upgrading like culverts
Bridges
and
and
swales,
culverts.
ditches. Yeah, so instead of I think down at the bottom of our road, it's
Yes.
before I was there, but I remember you telling me it washed out at one point with the stream that runs under
Yeah,
the
Halloween of 2019
Yeah.
washed out, and so did Osgood Hill Road.
right. So if you picture a stream, it comes down like this, and then it's going to cross the road, and all of a sudden it pinches like that. And so big storm events is all this pressure. So a lot of Public Works is looking at, instead of a little pinch point, can they upgrade and have bigger culverts, bigger box culverts to have the water go through and hopefully avoid some of those events. That's one type of thing. We're identifying
Without
those
sending the
areas.
problem downstream.
Right.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
We have a very well equipped and capable public works department.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the other thing we do is we have a 15% fund balance, undesignated
Right.
fund balance. So we have cash on hand where if an emergency does happen, like when Reed Road washed out, we were able to work on that without waiting to borrow money. We'd have to borrow money from anybody to do that, and then we get reimbursed for it later. And so with a lot of the flooding that happened this past summer, a lot of communities had to go borrow money to fix the road. We're not in that situation. We don't have a cash flow.
And the other part of that is our Public Works Department is good. They're familiar with working with FEMA, going after those FEMA grants so that when a storm event happens, they are documenting what we need. Even before we know it's going to be a FEMA event, they're starting to track and document all the stuff they need, man hour, equipment costs, damages, stuff like that, so that they can then apply for the money to get reimbursed if we need it.
Ken, I'm going to say something. And I am a supporter of public works. But my base earlier comments of the kid in the candy store when you're a department head, I'd like that. Williston has one. We saw this other community. They have 2 particular pieces of equipment that, for what they do, have semi-limited use. Granted, I would have liked one when I was in business. One is a detachable truck. Okay, it's a hook lift system. They got a brand new Ford, beautiful vehicle. Do we really need that? That's about $100,000. Drop in the bucket, but it's on budget, I realize. Second to that, they have a nice new Kubota tracked skid steer machine with a big, expensive brush hog. The only time I've ever seen it be employed is to mow the steep banks on the Sark Highway. Is a machine of such a nature absolutely necessary? These, again, I go back to what each department needs. Everybody is like a kid at Christmas. Ooh, I want that. We're going to pitch for that. And I see that happening. I'm a guy who's been involved in equipment all my life. I'm very fluent in all this. And it's a drop in the bucket. But over all the departments, it just seems sometimes we have to say, no, not right now. And I've done that in my business. I've done it in the golf course. I've had my staff mad at me. No, we're not getting a new mower this year. We're going to get one more year out of it. That's $100,000. This doesn't ever happen. I know it's hard because it's nobody's money. It is, but it isn't. When you're used to working with public funds, it's easy to spend. Very easy. We'll get it here, we'll get it there. When you're dealing with your own money and your home budgets at home, you look at things a lot different than you would for a municipal budget. We all share it, and that makes it all right. But if it's coming out of my pocketbook or checkbook, it's a different story. And I'm sure you all look at your own finances in your own world that way. Municipal budgets never are looked at that way. Spend, spend, spend.
So we had, how long did we have that grader?
Too long. Yeah.
I think the town of, I think that's actually one of the reasons for the separation between the city and the town. I think the town departments, the ones that I know about, have pinched a penny so tight that it's time to start putting money into the capital budget that we haven't been doing. It's time. I know the library, because I'm a library trustee.
I said no to a lot of people in the select board and said,
I just want to hear more no's.
I think that they've pinched a penny so tight that it's time to start putting money into some of these things.
We look very carefully at our maintenance dollars versus our capital dollars. At what point does it make sense to replace that piece of equipment instead of
I get that.
We had like our grader for 24 years or something like that. It was almost 30.
And they sold it for what they paid for it, probably, because it's a Caterpillar.
John, you don't see this, but so to talk about the budget process a little bit, we pretty much start in July or August, where we start talking to department heads for the following year. We start talking to department heads about budget season's coming up. We're going to be getting you the budget. You're going to be working on proposals soon. We go to the select board in August and say, what are your goals? What do we want to accomplish this year? Department heads got their budgets to me, to the manager, at the end of September this year. I turned that around, working with Dan, working with others to get it to the select board by the end of October. So just my time as manager for the past 2 years. Last year obviously was a unique situation with the loss of this junction. When we originally got those budget proposals from department heads, it was over 40% tax rate increase. We got it down to a 23% tax rate increase. That's by saying no. Same thing this year. The select board asked for a 5% tax rate increase.
Yes.
When it first came, I'm almost done. When it first got the proposals in this year, we put it all together. We looked at all the proposals together. It was like 7.5%. Looking at it's down less than 5%. That's by saying no. That's by cutting.
What truly scares me is this seems to be a yearly thing every year, and it just keeps growing. I've got another 20, 30 years. He's got a whole rest of his life. Is it getting to the point we can't afford to keep open land anymore? Am I going to be forced to put housing on my land just to pay the taxes? My grandfather blowing his grave.
So part of our challenge is 65% of our budget is made up by personnel, salaries and benefits. We have contractual raises that go up every single year.
And a large part of your taxes are school taxes, which we have no control over.
Correct. So really, we're just the salaries and benefits. Health insurance is up. Premiums are up 13-14% this year. That alone takes a big chunk. Where a lot of times we're holding off on services, we're holding off on equipment, we're holding off on purchases of stuff because we have to pay for these personnel.
Or capital or fixed.
That's why you got to have running a big business with a lot of employees. I don't take it anymore. Just too much. Paying for everything and everybody.
And I would contend that our department heads in the initial process actually did a really good job of trying to be responsible and good stewards of understanding that they're squeezed in by these personnel effects and things that are out of their control. And, seeing the effects on a
The cost
discretionary
of labor is
level.
just gone crazy. Crazy. My thing, how do we afford to be in our community? The constant boom, boom, boom up is quite a bit.
Questions about the budget? Direction? Anything else? No. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, thanks for really coming.
We wrap it
Great
up.
comments.
Let's see, have more.
Nope. Unless something else switches my brain in another direction.
I've got some more coffee, so we can give it a few more minutes.
I don't know if this is a budget thing. I noticed that, is it Sleepy Hollow Road West? Road right
West Sleepy, yep.
They have a no salt issue on their road. I don't know anything about them, but I know that so much of our road affects the waterways that run straight down the stream. Who do I talk to? Finding out if that's something.
Well, whoever buys the ice melting stuff for the town, you don't have to buy. They don't buy just salt anymore. There's other stuff.
Like a sand mixture.
Yeah, and it might
Are
be
there
magnesium
chemicals?
chloride rather than sodium chloride, which is not as bad. So, but you could ask. You could try that.
Yeah. Sorry, that's not a budget question.
No, public works, happy to put you in touch.
Well, I agonize about the dirt roads, and I'm a civil engineer. I keep thinking about ways you can keep the dirt roads, but not have to grade them as many times a year.
Oh, no way.
And it's just,
Complaint City.
I mean, you can do like these additives, but it's very expensive. I don't know, but I'm still thinking about it. If I come up with a solution, I'll tell you.
You'll be a rich man in your
I was going to say, had Matt did,
You'll be a
we'll
billionaire.
That's all.
I am grateful